Thank you very much. So I'm Jordan Mazurke. I'm a lead engineer at Cognizant, and I'm very, very new to Australia, so you may have a little bit of difficulty understanding my accent. I think some of those of you who watch Game of Thrones will probably recognise it from the Northmen. But I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about mobile security. So it's a really, really dry subject. So I thought I'd take a little bit more of a light-hearted approach and just give you a little bit of a rundown, high level. I know you guys, most of you will be engineers, so I'm not going to delve too deep into the technicalities. And just as a little side note, as kind of an addendum to this talk, there's a series of Medium articles that have been posted that go into these topics in a lot more detail and probably answer some of those more technical questions that you have. But just for now, we're going to look at the way you can hack your way to a secure iOS app. And we're going to do that through the guise of adopting a security superpower. I mean, I promise you this is really quite a dry subject, so we do really need to dig down and get some little bit of fun from this. So why do we have to go to war, and particularly why with iOS? iOS is probably the most secure mobile platform out there. Apple have done a really good job at developing a very sophisticated security APIs that help us do the jobs we need. So by way of an analogy, if you have a brand new property and you want to really secure that property, you get the best door you possibly can, the thickest door you can get. You've got 3 locks on there. Nobody's going to break it. No locksmiths are going to be able to crack them locks at all. Apple have given you that door. The problem is if your children leave your windows open, your property is not particularly secure. So the apps you guys develop, that I develop, are the windows to this operating system. So we have to make sure that we're locking the windows as well as locking this big fancy door that we've got. So if we're going to talk with the iOS security cool kids, we're going to have to get down the lingo. So just a quick run through what these mean, and I'll give you some of the lingo that I use as well. So we've got Whitebox testing. So the way you can think about that is playing hide and seek with your friends. You always know where they hide, so you can go and find them straight away. Black box testing, you're playing with people you've never played hide and seek with before. You don't know where they're hiding, and you're wearing a blindfold. Static analysis. So the best I could think of was trying to find that one dodgy search entry that you've done on your family shared laptop. The one that you were looking for your friend, of course, not for yourself. A dynamic analysis is watching in horror whilst your mum finds that one dodgy search entry you've done on the family laptop that you were looking for your friend, of course. A jailbreaking, there's nothing particularly funny to say about jailbreaking. I'm sure you've all come across it before. It's a way of just circumventing all the safeguards Apple have built in there, but it allows you to do a lot of things that you can't ordinarily do. So Tussidia or not Tussidia, if you're talking about really security testing your mobile applications, you are going to have to jailbreak a device. Do yourself a favour though, jailbreak it and keep it jailbroken. Apple engineers are really smart. I mean, they pass all those whiteboard tests, so they must be really smart. So if you've got a jailbroken device, get it, lock it in a drawer, and use it whenever you need to do the pen tests. But, little disclaimer, don't be stupid. Do not use a jailbroken device for your day-to-day activities. There's lots and lots of exploits out there. I'm sure you've all seen the stories before. People who've used jailbroken devices and just exposed all of their personal data. So, if we're going to develop an iOS security superhero kind of status, we're going to need a superpower. So, Thor's got his hammer, Spider-Man's got his web, and Wolverine's got those weird things that grow out of his arm. So, as an iOS security assessor, you're going to have a needle. So, I know it doesn't sound that impressive, but it does get a little bit better. Needle is a framework for doing security pen testing. So, the guys at MWR Labs have done a really good job of grabbing all the different functionality that's there in the disparate forms and wrapping it in one piece of kit called Needle. So it's a command line tool, it's written in Python, it's meant to be extensible, reusable, and you can add anything into there. There's lots of stuff there. If you look at the Medium articles that I talked about, it goes through more details how to install them, because unfortunately the wiki instructions are wrong, but there are quite easy workarounds for that. Just to give you a little bit of context, I was able to install it and have it up and running on the command line on my Mac in less than 5 minutes, so you guys should be absolutely fine if I can do that. When you're doing the actual penetration testing, you're going to need an agent installed on the app as well, which is supplied from the same place. If you go and look on the GitHub account, so that's just an application that sits there and acts as like a proxy agent on the mobile app and lets you get in there and do all these cool things and find out whether your app is secure or not. You do need to read the manual though, and it gives us quite a good manual. The guys as well, just out of interest, Needle is the iOS testing framework. They have an equivalent for Android, which is called Droza, and it works in the very, very same context. Really easy to use. So there you go. In 9 slides, less than 9 slides, you're now superhero ready. So what we're going to do now is take you through your first few school days of superhero school and see how you can get on. So attack vector we're going to look at today is data. So I say data and you guys all seem to say data, but you know what I mean. Cache and cache as well. I say cache, but you'll pick up as I go along. So mobile applications are predominantly focused on data. How we store them, how we manage them, and what we do with them. So this is going to be the first topic you're going to look at, and we're going to investigate how we can protect that data you've got on your mobile application. So day one, we're going to look at the keychain. So the keychain is like the underpinning of pretty much everything Apple talks about from a security point of view. When you look at the big data protection APIs, they've gone at great length to build and expand upon. It's all underpinned by the keychain. So the keychain, well, it can be a friend, it can also be your biggest enemy. So picture the keychain is you are saving things in there, whatever you want, secure blobs of data. It's supposed to be small, discrete bits of information. It's designed primarily for things like session tokens, things of information it's keeping there, but quite often it's abused and you can save lots of different information there. The problem with the keychain is that it's a little bit like a puppy. So if a puppy gets hold of something that it wants, and it shouldn't necessarily have, you've got a hell of a time getting that thing back off of it. The keychain's the same. So the keychain will persist data irrespective of whether your app is there or not. So you save something in the keychain, delete your app, it's there, it's still there. It's not going to go away. You go and buy a phone from some second-hand phone shop and load up the keychain and have a look what's in there, which you'll see in a moment is quite easy to do. You may find lots of information particular to your application and particular to users of your application that you don't necessarily want to share. So as part of that needle, you're going to have the ability to darn. So I don't know if you know what darn means. I don't know if it's a Yorkshire phrase, but darn is you use a needle to darn holes in anything that's torn. So that's what we're going to do. So a needle, when you're running against application, you can run and do keychain dumps. So this will use a third-party tool that's built in as part of the needle package called Frida. And it will go in there, it will extract everything from your keychain and display it in human-readable form. So you'll be able to see everything that's there. See, the command is as simple as, so you see that in your application, you can go running over to the dev team, say, stop, this is what you've got to do, you've got to listen to me now, and this is how you easily fix it. For all of these data holes that you can find, there are very, very easy mitigations, and I accept that these are really, really contrite examples. These are really, really simple, basic examples, but you can see how the scope of it can quite easily grow. If you've got simple things like this, it expands dramatically very quickly. So you can easily check and delete your keychain on fresh installs of an application to make sure none of that data's persisted. The keychain API is a little bit difficult in that it doesn't really offer you any ability to hook into the removal of an app and the wiping of it. So it's something you are going to have to manage manually. So you're probably feeling quite happy with yourself now. You've thwarted your first potential security threat. And your team are probably very grateful. They'll probably still call you a smart ass in the pub afterwards, but you've got to day two. So day two, we're going to look at now what you can possibly do with the cache. Now, the keychain is a complex beast. It handles 128-bit AES encryption, uses GCN mode. It's a massive piece of kit. You'll be probably thinking if you can solve any problems with that, then you can probably solve anything. You've had day one, you've been very successful. The UI kit has got some very, very humble objects in there. So UI text field, UI text view, and the UI search bar. But if they're not managed properly, they can be like the Cerberus three-headed beast. iOS tries to be smart, and it's taken these very, very humble pieces of kit and added lots of different bits of functionality on top of that. And one of the key things is the ability to autocomplete and cache anything that you use on a regular basis. And it saves that directly into the application. It saves it in a binary format, so very generally speaking, even if you could get to that, you wouldn't be able to do anything with it. Using Frida again, Needle's able to get in there and give you a live running stream of anything that's saved into the cache. Even more, it can run a dynamic log and sit there and watch as you type away and collect anything that's in there. So you can simply run the autocomplete command on Needle, and it's a really, really easy thing to fix. You've got your auto correction types, which is going to just turn that autocomplete trait off on any UI text field, text view or search bar. So perhaps those dodgy entries you were looking for your friend wouldn't turn up quite so much. So then we've got the final day that we're going to talk about today, the screenshots. So again, Apple, in the pursuit of everything beautiful and pretty, decides to take a screenshot of your application when you're going into background mode. I'm sure you're all aware, you double click, you see your array of catalogues of opened apps in there and the images that's in there. Imagine you're working on, for argument's sake, a banking app, and you take a screenshot of or decide to close the app down on the page where all your personal information is there, perhaps account numbers, credit card numbers, any of your personal details. That screenshot's taken, and using Needle, you can very, very easily run a monitor on any screenshots that your application takes over its lifestyle. So you literally open it up, go to a point where there's some information. There you go. So you can see there that Needle's running, listening for new screenshots. It's found the screenshots straight away. Bear in mind as well that iOS backups and iCloud backups suck this data up. So the private virus is not excluded from these by default. So unless you've been very, very careful with how these things are working, then you're going to be pushing things up to the cloud. And I know it's quite secure in the cloud, but it has been known to be hacked every now and then. I'm sure you've seen all the videos and pictures of celebrities. Now, there are many, many different ways to mitigate this, but very generally speaking, you can sit there and you can capture the event on the application did enter background. You can use blurred overlays. You can put your own custom image in there, add it over, as long as you remember to take it back away again when it does re-enter the background. They're very, very simple things to mitigate against. So there are so many more exploits that are out there and that can be investigated. And what Needle does is it gives you a very, very early starting point and gives you a way to actually look at something on your application very, very quickly. So it starts with very high-level commands where it literally says, look for any potential openings that are in my app, any potential vulnerabilities. And it'll go through and through a combination of static analysis and dynamic analysis. It will go through and look at your source code, and it will then pinpoint areas where it thinks it's got potential weaknesses. So it gives you a starter for 10. What it then does is starts getting more granular with all the different bits of functionality that are available. So you can dig deeper and have a look and see what bits are actually lurking in there. Because there is always the problem that there could potentially be false positives. But just to give you a little bit of idea, Needle can reverse engineer all your code bases and literally give it into a human readable format. It can circumnavigate jailbreak detection, so those people who think, oh, it's okay, I'll put a little test in my app delegate. If it's jailbroken, the app will never start, it's okay. It's literally one line of code to one line of the terminal to get around that kind of thing. Similarly, it can circumnavigate any touch ID or biometric opening of applications. So if you're using that to store a link against sessions for authentication, you can very, very easily get around that. It does static code checks, dynamic analysis code checks. It decompiles binary cookies that you get from web views. It can list and extract all p-lists that you store within your files. It can also list and extract all databases that you use. So if you use anything like core data with a SQL-like persistence store, it can very, very easily get access to all that information. You can see quite how open some of the data that you use is and what's there available. So like I said, these are very, very contrite examples that I'll give there, very, very basic, and it's just a way for you to start and look at it. These tests take minutes to run. They are able to be built into a pipeline, although I think they do lose some of the context, perhaps some of the more high-level stuff is suited to that. And it gives you that just initial starting point to know where to look, and things that you perhaps don't ordinarily consider on a day-to-day basis. You can see how some of the reports are. So just to give you a bit of an idea, I come from the financial sector in the UK. I've worked pretty much all my time in banks or betting companies, and part of the daily developer tool set would be to carry out tasks like this. We'd have to submit almost penetration tests on each release that we did, and it really, really is a massive amount of awareness around it on the developer scene in the UK. You can see how the increasing importance now, you can see things happening in the news all the time, and people are so careful about the personal information that they share. So, good luck, people. Have a play around with Needle, see if you can find any vulnerabilities in your source code and happy fixing them. Thank you very much.
Does anybody have any questions?
Just to confirm, I think I'm clear with what you said. The needle application is installed within the app as an exercise to kind of penetrate from within itself.
So as part of the Needle framework, which is the command line tool set, which is the security penetration testing toolkit, it requires a runner application to be on the phone. So it's separate to your application. It doesn't go in the application. It's a separate app that's installed. So you install it from the Cydia App Store, and it's just a way of running relays through there. I think the most common way to think about it, if you've ever used any anything like Xamarin, they hijacked that kind of information to kind of deal with how they capture their testing routines. So it's almost like a mini HTTP server that just routes commands through there.
So I have a question. Out in the consumer world,
Yep.
the entry vector for any of these exploits would be jailbroken device, or is there a way to pull this information out from a customer's phone without jailbreaking?
So there is. So you had one of the slides where it was to Cydia or not Cydia. No, so you can do a lot of these exploits without actually a jailbroken device. The problem is you experience slower times and you probably get a lot more false positives. Needle framework's built predominantly to work on jailbroken devices. There is a competitor called Objective, which is built solely for non-jailbroken devices. The jailbroken device, it's a prerequisite not because they think people have jailbroken devices out in the field. It's just because it's an easier way to get to the underlyings of what you're doing in there and give you those pointers faster. So the idea is we use this earlier on in the development cycle as part of your daily development task to capture it, not to just see if people are using jailbroken devices and therefore we'll get around them.
So the risk for this is less, like, if it's not a jailbroken device. Not to say it doesn't exist, but it's just less.
The risk, I suppose it depends how you look at it. Yes, I suppose the risk of it being publicly available and being out there in the wilderness, everybody knowing about it, then yes, it is less risky by using non-jailbroken devices. But that doesn't mean it isn't something that we should not do. I mean, what's the real risk of having man-in-the-middle attacks, but we still take them really, really seriously? It's that kind of approach to it. But you are right. Apple have done a really, really good job of building up those data protection APIs and the whole security infrastructure and architecture. So yeah, it is less of a concern. But it's still a concern, yes, definitely. In fact, in the UK, it's legislation that you have to run these on these financial applications. Every major release has to have a security penetration test with it, especially if you want things like ISO certification.
That's a good thing.
Yep.
Were there any other questions? No?
Thank you very much, guys. Cheers.